City of Toledo inspectors and a judge say it's not safe to live in 8 Toledo apartment buildings. They've been condemned. But the 13 ABCI team found people are still living in those places. Some say no one told them to leave. Only 13 ABCI team reporter Sean Haggerty has been trying to figure out how this is happening. Sean standing by live with what he's uncovered.
That's right. There is a court order condemning 8 buildings at the Riviera Maya complex in West Toledo. This is it right here for a variety of different reasons. Here's just one of them. Holes in ceilings of different buildings, debris all over the place in several of the units. And we also found this leaky roof in just one of them last night. Those are 8 units that the health department and the city say that no one should be living in. But we found people are still living inside this complex despite a court order in September that this had to close.
Okay. And then this one started to leak.
A leaky roof, just one of the issues Stacy McTaggart deals with in her apartment at 4887 Overland Parkway. When she called about a furnace problem, she was told it would not be fixed because her building had been condemned.
I was angry, I was scared, I was confused. How do you not tell your tenants that the buildings are condemned and you have them living in a place that's dangerous for them?
That's right. The first time anyone mentioned anything to her about this place being inhabitable was this week. The 13 ABCI team uncovered this court order dated September 11th of this year, where Judge C. Allen McConnell says 8 buildings on this property, including McTaggart's, are uninhabitable, and that the complex is to immediately comply with the order to close the buildings. But the I-team found yet another condemned building with people inside. You live here right now?
Yeah.
Did you know it was condemned?
No, we didn't. I didn't know that.
Lacey Holloway says just this week someone posted the court order on her building's doors. So why are you still here?
I have to find me a place to move.
McTaggart didn't get any written notice, but she's moving out on her own.
How do you not tell the tenants this is what's going on? How do you not, as soon as this is going on, have them moved?
The I-team went to management for answers and did not get any. All we were told is that the complex is still open for business, but the manager would not answer any of our questions about why people are still allowed in condemned buildings. Places with holes in walls, ceilings falling apart, and debris all over. Residents say they've complained about these issues for a long time, but
I never actually thought that I would wake up one day and my building was actually condemned.
Now, I've been talking with City of Toledo inspectors about this property. They said they're going to send over inspectors to see if anyone's still living inside. And as you just saw, they certainly will find people in there. Officials at the complex are supposed to be in housing court next week to face a judge on the issues there. We'll be in court to let you know if they have anything to say about all those conditions you just saw. Reporting live, Sean Haggerty, 13 ABC Action News.
But we begin with Sean Haggerty with what all renters need to know if they find themselves in a home that they don't feel is safe for them or their families.
On this rainy Friday, Sunny Beasley deals with a leaky roof. Sometimes when it gets really bad, she needs this tarp. She lives in the Riviera Maya apartments, one of the buildings that is not condemned. What did you think you could do?
Just keep complaining. That was about it.
The I-team connected her with attorney Dawn Kristen.
In order to get that, they would have to make sure that they're taking care of the problem.
Kristen says landlords must provide safe and livable conditions for tenants.
And if they're not doing that, they need to be putting the landlord on notice of what is wrong with the properties.
If you find an issue, no matter how big or small, report it to management in writing. With that documentation, you can go to Toledo Municipal Court, fill out paperwork, and pay your rent into something called rent escrow. That money goes right to the court. After a hearing, a judge decides whether the money goes to the landlord or toward repairs in your apartment.
As long as they have put the landlord on notice and they've given them a reasonable opportunity to cure the problem and they haven't done that, they can terminate the lease. And properties like these, probably the most viable option is to terminate your lease, not to pay any more rent and to go ahead and find another place to live.
It seems documentation is key. Did you realize that the documentation was as important as it is?
Really? Now I do.
These tips go for any property, not just here at Riviera Maya. Residents say they hope it gets better here, but some don't hold out much hope.
They need to condemn the whole place until they get it fixed.
Do you think anyone should be living here?
No, not at all.
Several buildings are without power and empty now at the Riviera Maya apartments. The plan was to cut power to 8 condemned buildings, but one more was added to that list. 13 ABC's Amy Montgomery has the follow-up on this I-team investigation. New at 11. Amy?
Well, Lee, that extra building is attached to another building, and the two share an electrical line. Now, when crews came out here to cut off the electricity, they ultimately determined that the power in that building all the way in the back there had to stay off because of bad wiring. The issues plaguing the Riviera Maya apartments continue, even after 8 buildings were condemned by the city of Toledo. Wednesday, while electrical crews shut off power, a 9th building was cut off too. Problem is, people live in 4 of those units, and the electricity isn't coming back on. The city says the building at 4885 Overland Parkway has shoddy wiring and isn't safe. That means for now, those tenants will have to stay elsewhere. At this point, it's unclear whether they'll have to find a permanent new home because that building hasn't officially been condemned. But this move is the latest, responding to a laundry list of problems at the complex. Earlier this month, 13 ABC took you inside the condemned apartments. Ceilings were leaking and caving in. Some units were covered in debris. The attorney representing the complex says most of the residents in condemned units were relocated to other units in the complex, but some moved to other places. In the meantime, this case will be back in front of a housing court judge sometime next week.
New at 5:30, homeless in an instant. That's the situation almost a dozen families who lived at the Riviera Maya apartments found themselves in a week ago. And life has only gotten more challenging for them. 13 ABC's Melissa Vates checked in with one of the families affected. Melissa.
Lee and Christian, I talked with some of the families that we've been following here at the Riviera Maya apartments, and they tell us that repairs still haven't been made. So that means they're still living in substandard living conditions here. As for the 10 families who've been displaced, some are still living in chaos. I caught up with the Border family.
We were going to do the same thing.
For the past week, Brian Border, his wife, and 4 kids have been living in one hotel room.
My wife and I sleep in one of the beds. My 3 daughters sleep in the other bed, and my son is on the floor.
A cot won't fit, and the hotel doesn't allow pets, so the Borders have had to surrender their cats and 1 dog to the Humane Society.
I'm hoping we can get at least our dog back. I'm not sure if we'll be able to get the cats back.
After living at Riviera Maya apartments for a year, the Borders came home in 30-degree weather to find the electricity turned off, the electric company deeming the building unsafe. Without warning, the family found themselves homeless.
We've already got probably over $300 invested in a U-Haul and storage fees and everything.
The sudden disruption, devastating. The upcoming holidays making it even worse.
It's turned us completely upside down. I mean, just as a family, financially, everything.
The only word they've heard from the Riviera Maya apartment management?
His main concern when I was talking to him was more concerned about their image in the public.
The Borders are one of 10 families left homeless by the Riviera Maya neglect shutdowns. Bianca Guerrero runs the 211 program from the United Way. The agency is working very closely with the displaced families.
Right now, they're just trying to get their lives together, move to a new location.
The United Way and Toledo Department of Neighborhoods are helping the residents get new permanent housing. And given the conditions at Riviera Maya, they say they are bracing for more people to need new housing.
We're prepared to help them in the same way that we've helped these other families.
Families like the Borders will qualify for help from the Toledo Department of Neighborhoods for their security deposit and first 3 months' rent. But as for recouping any of their financial losses, chances are slim to none.
A bombshell in court today, something residents at a West Toledo apartment complex have been begging for. A judge has ordered every unit at the Riviera Maya complex in West Toledo inspected for safety concerns. This coming after a 13 ABC I-Team investigation found people living in condemned buildings there. I-Team reporter Sean Haggerty has been on this story since the start, joining us with this major development tonight. Sean?
Over and over again, we've heard from residents here at the Riviera Maya that somebody needs to go through this place top to bottom to find out what exactly is going on. City of Toledo inspectors told us they only go through if they get complaints. Today, the story changed. The city asking a judge to have permission to go through everything, and that is going to happen in the next 2 weeks. The 13 ABC I-Team uncovered mess after mess inside units at the Riviera Maya complex near Lasky and Lewis. We haven't seen everything, and neither have city inspectors. That changes now. Judge C. Alan McConnell ruled Wednesday the city can inspect all units based on safety concerns that have been brought to the attention of the city by several residents.
We'll take it building by building.
The lawyer for the complex fought the order, saying that specific safety concerns needed to be brought up for each individual unit to warrant the inspection. But the judge said enough was brought to the attention of the city for the entire inspection.
The safety comes first.
And then this, complex owners have a $115,000 outstanding water bill owed to the city of Toledo. So at any point, the city could turn off the water and no one would be allowed to live here. The city doesn't want to force everyone out by doing that, but if there are safety issues, people will need to be moved. The I-Team also learned in court that there is a letter of intent between the current owners and a Nebraska group that wants to buy the property. City of Toledo inspectors are optimistic about that deal.
They have a track record that with other projects that they've done across the country that would indicate to us that they can do this project and turn it around successfully.
The current owners once again did not show up in court, and as for what they have to say, here's their lawyer.
Do your owners have anything to say to the people living in this complex?
I said everything I'm going to say on the record in there.
Well, what do they want to say to the people living in this complex?
I said everything I'm going to say on the record in there.
So they don't want to say anything to the people living in these messes? On the record, that lawyer did say that the deal to sell this place could happen by the end of the year. Again, the inspections will happen in the next 2 weeks, and that's when there will be another court appearance where the city of Toledo will present its findings to Judge McConnell.
Some people still living at a massive West Toledo apartment complex say they're relieved that the city's getting involved. Today, a judge ordered city inspectors to go through every building at Riviera Maya near Lasky and Lewis. In the last few weeks, the city made sure that families moved out of 8 condemned buildings after 13 ABC discovered people still living in the units with water leaking through the ceilings and drywall falling to the floors, among other issues. 13 ABC's Christine Long is live with what's new at 11. Christine.
Diane, city inspectors guess about 140 people still live here. Some families are grateful that a judge ordered their apartments be inspected within the next 2 weeks for safety. Others say they're happy they don't have any problems and just want to be left alone.
I like you. Who's my handsome boy?
3-month-old Landon Blakeman lives in one of the uncondemned apartments at Riviera Maya in Toledo. His parents say their window is broken, the bathroom has no ventilation, they need a space heater for warmth, and they're worried about mold in a vacant unit on the other side of their wall.
Have you guys complained to the owners before?
Plenty of times.
The couple is relieved a judge today ordered the city to inspect every single building by December 5th.
We'll take it building by building.
I think it's a good idea because, I mean, I don't want to live in an apartment with black mold right next to us. Or the one upstairs. Who knows what the one above us looks like that no one lives in.
I've never had that kind of problem.
Marlo Wright lives right across the hall. She just moved here 2 weeks ago from one of the 8 condemned buildings, which she called home for 2 years.
I kind of like my apartment. I liked the one I was in before. I didn't see that there was necessarily a problem. And I kind of wish they'd just leave us alone.
There are approximately 60 buildings in this complex. The owners voluntarily closed more than a dozen. The city and United Way are helping the families left homeless find new homes.
I'd like to get out of here. I don't want to be in here.
Landon's parents are hoping inspectors condemn this building too. They say they can't move out now because it costs too much to get out of their lease.
Our lease isn't up until June 1st, so we'd have to pay all those months until June.
Across the hall,
I just want to be left alone. Let me live. Let me enjoy my apartment. I love living here, quite honestly.
the Riviera Maya owners were not in court today, but their lawyer was, and he told the judge they have a letter of intent with a Nebraska group who wants to buy this property. Also, one more thing to note, the property owners also have a $115,000 outstanding water bill owed to the city of Toledo.
Now to a follow-up to a story 13 ABC's I-Team first told you about. There are more problems at the Riviera Maya apartment complex in West Toledo. Residents there now complain that they spent this weekend without water. 13 ABC's Sean Hegarty has a look at what's behind that problem.
You can turn on the faucet, but nothing comes out at this Overland Parkway building at the Riviera Maya complex. The exact cause is not known, but this sinkhole, now surrounded by tape and cones, is the likely culprit. Residents in several buildings lost water Saturday morning.
It's going to be a cat and mouse game trying to figure out what's going to happen next to you.
This is the same complex where 9 buildings have been closed in the last month, 8 of those condemned with health and safety violations. In early December, the city of Toledo will inspect every unit and report back to a housing court judge which units can remain open.
You don't know if you're going to have a home or not, and it gets frustrating after a while.
It's miserable and very frustrating.
While many residents are at least glad that some of the holes and some of the issues are at least cordoned off with cones and tape, as we were out here on Sunday, we found this hole developing that neighbors say they haven't seen that just started. For now, these residents take buckets to neighboring apartments in search of buildings with water, with no word on when everyone will be restored, with little optimism from some.
We're going to try to eventually get out as soon as we can. I mean, it's not fair to the kids to have to put up in this kind of mess. They deserve better than this.
In West Toledo, Sean Hegarty, 13 ABC Action News.
The apartment managers were not available for comment today, but Toledo's public information director tells us that the water line that's down is maintained by Riviera Maya. Stacy Weber says the owners have not attempted to repair those lines.
13 ABC has just learned that more people will be displaced from their homes at the Riviera Maya apartments.
Let's get right to 13 ABC's Sean Hegarty with these new developments on this ongoing I-Team investigation. Sean.
This was a huge surprise to residents today. They were expecting the inspections, and all that information was supposed to go to a judge on Friday, and the judge would make the final decision. But today, the decision was made on 9 buildings, and now 26 families are looking for new homes. This is one of the buildings that was condemned today, 4870 Overland. Building inspection from the city of Toledo came out and looked at the electrical, and they deemed the electrical was not up to code, so they made these homes uninhabitable. They deemed them uninhabitable, so people need to leave immediately. That is 9 buildings that have been condemned today. That brings the total number of condemned buildings to 17 in the last few months, and an 18th one had to be shut down because of electrical issues. City of Toledo inspectors are still here. We've seen them walking through the complex in the last hour or so. What they're doing is trying to gather even more information so that that information can go to the judge on Friday. But again, 9 buildings have been condemned because of electrical issues. That means 26 families now need to find some other place to live, and they're being told they need to leave immediately. So you've seen a lot of families starting to pack up, and a lot of these people that we've talked with said that they already made plans to move, and now they're trying to fight for their security deposits, and that is up in the air if they will get them. We'll have a full report on what else is happening in the complex and where these families go from here tonight on Action News beginning at 6.
This is actually the worst I've ever seen as far as living conditions go.
The buildings have water problems, electrical issues, and some have holes in the roofs. And now the city's ordered residents of all of the apartment buildings at the Riviera Maya complex to get out. City inspectors said today that no one should be living there.
And to make sure that happens, Toledo Edison cut the power. Been on this situation since the I-Team discovered people were living in condemned apartments back in October.
We have team coverage of today's decision to shut down the entire complex. Melissa Veitch talked with families affected by today's decision.
But we begin with I-Team reporter Sean Hegarty live with the reason the city is ordering everyone out. Sean?
Yeah, the exact reason today was electrical and wiring. The city says that electric was not up to code in any of the buildings that had people still living inside. So today that power, they said, was unsafe, and they shut it off. The city said this thing had to happen because of the electrical issues. So we saw Toledo Edison crews today this morning cutting power to the 22 remaining buildings that had people inside after city inspectors went through earlier this morning. When they came across that poor wiring, the decision was made to cut the power. This comes after 15 other buildings were condemned yesterday. There are a total of 63 buildings in this whole complex, over 500 units in total. And right now, no one is to be living in any of them. Inspectors say this is the worst living conditions they've seen.
The inside conditions were worse than I expected. The wiring was as I expected it to be, but the living conditions as far as the drywall and the mold and things like that was worse than I expected.
Now, there were 8 units condemned back in September, and in October, we showed you that people were still living inside them. But now, with no electricity and with temperatures dipping into the 20s tonight, there's the big likelihood that no one will be inside these units tonight. Reporting live, Sean Hegarty, 13 ABC Action News.
And while the problems are so readily apparent at Riviera Maya, there are many people who remember when the apartment complex is really a nice place to live, and they say they've had no choice to watch helplessly as the current owners just took the money and let the place fall apart. 13 ABC's Melissa Vage continues our I-Team coverage tonight. Melissa, you talked with some of the people who are just heartbroken. They actually have to move. Tell us about that.
You know, that's right, Lee. You know, there's a lot of older couples who live here, and they've lived there their whole lives, 40, 50 years in some cases, and they've kept their apartments nice while they've had to watch as this apartment complex has fallen into ruins.
Lights under the water.
Mary Jo King has lived at Riviera Maya for 38 years.
And this place was so gorgeous when we moved in, you wouldn't believe it.
She's watched the complex fall into ruin.
And this current owner just ran it into a freaking tenement.
Her partner Joe packs up 38 years worth of memories.
He takes the money and goes.
His co-workers are volunteering to move the couple, the apartment complex literally shutting down in the middle of everything.
Out of nowhere, the electrics went off. Made it kind of hard to move and pack everything.
Joe and Mary Jo thought they'd always live here.
It's part of the panic. What the heck do you do after 38 years to split in 2 or 3 days? Give me a break.
Pat Gibbs has lived here for 50 years. She's struggling with shock and outrage.
But I think that son of a that owns this place, that didn't take care of this place, ought to be in prison.
Pat is getting relocation help from the Toledo Department of Neighborhoods. Elizabeth Wells has been going door to door in the buildings here, following the inspectors as they condemn the buildings.
To be eminently homeless is very traumatic for people.
Do you want me to wait for you here?
Offering help to relocate residents.
It's really important to treat people with respect and dignity because they are in a crisis situation and they want to be heard.
Mary Jo and Joe feel very lucky that they have the help of his employer, who is also paying for a hotel until the couple finds a new place to live.
I can't say enough. I don't know what I would have done.
Now, for the other displaced families, the Toledo Department of Neighborhoods, again, putting them up in hotels until they find a new place to live. Reporting live, Melissa Vage, 13 ABC Action News.
And stay with 13 ABC for continuing coverage of the Riviera Maya situation. You got to feel for those residents so much. We're going to be in court Friday when the city gives its report to a housing court judge. Time is up for the owners of the Riviera Maya apartments to secure that property. Welcome into Action News at 5:30. I'm Lee Conklin.
And I'm Diane Larson. Christian Brown has the night off. Today, lawyers for the city and the apartment complex were back in housing court, where the judge made several immediate requests.
13 ABC's Christina Williams has an update on this I-Team follow-up.
Tonight, the doors at the Riviera Maya are locked. Additional security is in place. But what happens next to this apartment complex? A judge says the owner has less than a week to make it to Toledo.
I don't think that they're going to materialize, nor do I think that they're going to do anything. I think it's going to be left to the city to pick up the pieces.
The apartment complex is quiet, and the city wants to keep it that way. After failing to meet the deadline to board up the property, a Toledo judge ordered the owners of the Riviera Maya put security in place around the clock and clean up piles of trash immediately. Abandoned vehicles will be towed and a no stopping order put in place.
Removing those vehicles that are in the property and preventing parking on the street and in the private lots is going to make it easier for security to identify vehicles that don't belong there.
The bigger concern is a long-term plan. The owners have no money and the city doesn't want to foot the bill. The condemned complex is already costing taxpayers more than $25,000 to help relocate residents. The problems date back to February, but lawyers for the owners now blame the city.
Consul's allegations that we have caused the problem is ludicrous. This property has deteriorated simply from the neglect of the current owners.
Soon enough, we'll hear from the owner. A judge ordered that she come to Toledo by Monday or face arrest. In Toledo, Christina Williams, 13 ABC, Action News.
And the next court hearing is set for Monday in Toledo Housing Court at 1:30. Of course, Action News will be there. We'll bring you the updates. In the meantime, if you're a tenant and need to remove any items from the apartments, get in touch with management as soon as possible. Well, after months without answers, on Monday, the owner of the complex at Riviera Maya must appear in a Toledo Housing Court. All new at 5:30, 13 ABC's Christina Williams brings you more on the case.
Val and Sharon Sklarov are real estate investors. They live outside of Chicago. The couple purchased the Riviera Maya apartment complex in Toledo back in 2005 for $5.6 million. Since then, hundreds of people have called the place home. But the apartment owners have a slew of financial problems. A quick internet search shows multiple lawsuits against the investors for failing to make payments. They own many properties under multiple different company names. Last year, a case involving Riviera Maya's financial problems made it all the way to the Ohio Supreme Court. It was part of, quote, several multi-state foreclosure proceedings involving the couple's trust, Kids Real Estate Group. Then in February, complaints started coming in about dangerous living conditions, including buildings with no heat, mold, and caved-in ceilings. Today, the buildings are condemned. Dozens of residents are without a home, and there's still no sign of the owners.
There's no money to pay bills.
Lawyers claim the two are in the middle of a bitter divorce and don't have the money to fix the problems. But now Toledo taxpayers might wind up footing the bill.
I think it's going to be left to the city to pick up the pieces. Our estimates are ranging from $25,000 to $50,000.
Meantime, if Sharon Sklarov doesn't show Monday afternoon, she'll face arrest.
She is a trustee. She is a responsible person, and I want her in court to give some indication as to what she's going to do to manage these properties.
In Toledo, Christina Williams, 13 ABC, Action News.
And the city of Toledo still hopes another investor will come forward and buy the Riviera Maya property and fix it up. As for the current owners, a Toledo judge wants a full outline of their assets to see just where money is really going. That hearing is set for Monday afternoon.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Action News at 6. I'm Diane Larson.
And I'm Lee Conklin. Thanks for joining us. The I-Team back on the case tonight. 13 ABC's Melissa Vage spoke with longtime tenants on just how the former residents of the Riviera Maya are coping with trying to find a new place to live. But first, the husband and wife who run the trust that owns the complex didn't show up in court today. Now warrants are out for their arrests. 13 ABC's I-Team reporter Sean Haggerty on this story from the very start looks at how the lawyers tried to explain the ownership group. Sean?
Yeah, the rationale today from the lawyer is that this complex is technically owned by a limited liability corporation and not by real people. So today he was saying the blame belongs in the corporation, the trust that was set up, and not the person who at one point gave a housing court judge a tour of the complex. This empty chair is where Sharon Sklarov should have been sitting Monday afternoon. She's one of the owners of the trust that owns the now shuttered Riviera Maya complex. Her no-show prompted the judge to accuse the pair of a deception game.
Your clients are apparently playing a little game with the court.
That game is that the units are owned by an LLC, and the lawyer for the LLC says the couple that owns the LLC is not responsible.
Is there any chance that these owners are going to be coming to Toledo anytime soon?
Well, the owner of the property is Kids Real Estate Group, LLC. These individuals are not the owners of the company.
Do you think they'll show now that they have arrest warrants?
I have no idea.
Attorney Tom Heinschel doesn't think the Sklarovs have any responsibility for hundreds being displaced from their homes and living in these filthy conditions.
Sheridan and Val don't have any personal responsibility for it because it's a limited liability company.
Things are not getting better at the complex. In court, inspectors say just last week they found 29 unsecured doors, 11 unsecured windows, and 28 piles of trash.
They don't feel personally responsible for anything that happened there.
You have no legal personal responsibility if it's a limited liability company.
Do they even feel bad about how this happened?
I don't have any comment on that.
The city today, their inspectors brought up the issue of security. Right now, they say they only see the private security from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and it's supposed to be 24 hours, so they told the judge about that today. Now, when it comes to who residents paid rent to, that rent money went to the management company. Now there's a dispute of how much money that went back into the complex. Reporting live, Sean Haggerty, 13 ABC Action News.
And the people who lived at Riviera Maya are families with children, senior citizens, and people on disability with fixed incomes and limited incomes. All had to uproot their lives, their families, to find a new home without very little notice. 13 ABC's Melissa Vage has an update on the efforts to get help for these families. Melissa.
Well, Diane, whether it's a limited liability corporation or individuals, as you mentioned, 100 families displaced. You had black mold, collapsing ceilings. You had dangerous wiring that could have caused a deadly fire. People had to go for their own safety. Now, so far, we have seen most of those families find new places to live, but the United Way does tell us they're still working with about 20 families. They hope to have them settled by the end of the week. We caught up with one of the residents who's still living in a hotel while her future apartment is being cleared by the Department of Neighborhoods.
A lot of people didn't have enough people to help them move.
the housing people didn't help us really make sure we was getting everything out. Like I said, I don't know if what I left there is there or not.
Rebecca tells us she had to leave a lot of her belongings there because she's on dialysis 3 out of 5 days a week. Now, so far, the city tells us they have spent almost $8,000 to help these families relocate. Reporting live, Melissa Vage, 13 ABC Action News.